Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Jay Pepito, and I run a personal training and strength and conditioning business in Center City, Philadelphia called Supreme Strength and Conditioning. My website is trainsupreme.com. You can check that out if you get a chance. And I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about sort of occupational fitness for tattooers. Essentially, I've been getting tattooed for a long time, and I've made friends with a lot of awesome tattooers over the years. And sometimes, when I'm hanging out, I get to hear about their different sort of dysfunctions that I think come on as an onset of the positions that they're in, that they're working in all day. So I teamed up with Sean of Occult Vibrations here, and we're going to go ahead and go through a couple things that you can do to lengthen your career and make sort of your joints and your whole body happier and healthier, and just kind of lead to a longer, more productive career in tattooing. Okay, so one of the things that I think is really, really important to consider when tattooing, and I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this, is paying attention to your back, discomfort in the lower back, or even pain in the lower back. We call that lower back pain, obviously. It's kind of an intuitive name. But one of the reasons that can come up a lot in your profession is you're going to spend a lot of time sort of in this position. Maybe you're hunched over working on a client's back piece, or a rib piece, or whatever the case might be. Maybe you're even just a taller person, and for you to get down onto a client, it's maybe a little bit harder. Either way, if you look at my back, you'll see that it's kind of got this convex sort of curve to it, and that's no good, actually. We want to sort of avoid that as much as possible. So one of the things you can do is sort of practice not being in that position, being in a little bit more of a straight back position, or recruit a little bit more of the lower back musculature and keep everything happier and healthier. So instead of kind of bending over like this to work on somebody, you would kind of maybe sort of stick your butt out a little bit more and bend the knees and sort of get into this position. If you see here, there's pretty much a straight line from the back of my neck all the way down to my tailbone, and here this is a good spot to be in. You can work in this position for a long time, and actually it'll stretch your hamstrings out, which are likely to be tight from sitting and working. So that's a good thing you can do. You can also practice this by picking objects up like this. So instead of sort of bending over to pick something up like this and using your back, you can kind of stick your butt out a little bit, bend those knees, grab this, and stand up with it. This is a much safer and healthier way to manipulate objects, and also a better position for you to be in all day while you're trying to work. So consider making that switch when you can. Okay, so when we're talking about your hands, as a tattooer, you're spending a lot of time probably with one hand you're using to stretch and kind of hold the client in position, and you're probably using the other hand to manipulate, your tattoo machine. And by doing that, you're kind of keeping this hand in this position all day, and you're probably taking this hand and you're gripping it pretty tightly, trying to control a moderately difficult tool to manipulate. So by doing that, you're actually spending a lot of time with your fingers in this position as opposed to your fingers in this position. You need to kind of balance that out a little bit. Since one hand is always in this position and one hand's always in this other position, you're going to encounter some differences in how the musculature is formed. Maybe some overuse injuries could result from all that. So in order to avoid that, something simple you can do, and we actually didn't bring any rubber bands, but this is just a really simple thing you can do. You can tie some rubber bands like around your fingers like this, and just sort of extend them like this, and that will train the musculature on this surface, keeping this hand, maybe it was in this position all day, so now you're, instead of just squeezing, you're actually extending as well. So that's something useful you can do on the hand that manipulates your machine. In addition to that, you can actually tie a rubber band around these two digits and kind of get this action going on, and that will help to work on the thumb a little bit, making sure that everything stays healthy around here. Both are a good idea. I recommend doing both equally on both hands. And this is the kind of thing, too. You don't have to come to the gym to do this. It's not like a 3 sets of 10 sort of thing. It's more of I'm sitting down at the end of a long night of work. Maybe I'm going to have some dinner and watch some TV. So you can pop a rubber band on and maybe just start exercising the free hand, in between, or, do it while you're hanging out before work or whatever. You can just kind of get this stuff in from time to time, and doing it every day for just a little bit will add up to a lot of work done over the course of weeks, months, and years that will help to balance things out. So definitely consider adding in all this digital sort of manipulation stuff into your routine.
All right, so if you spend, let's say you did 3 tattoos in a day, right? And each tattoo took about 2 hours, and they were all, just happened to be tattoos where you were seated predominantly the whole time. You're talking about a good 6 hours of sitting, and compared to the average American office worker, that's really nothing. But in the long term, sitting is very, very bad for your hips, your back, your knees. It's really bad for everything that really contributes to mobility and health. So One thing we can do to kind of address that seated posture that you're going to find yourself in because it's just part of your occupation is making sure that we stretch out the hip flexors, which are right here, and we stretch out the hamstrings, which are these muscles on the back of your leg back here. So let me show you how to do a couple stretches there that will sort of get those back where they need to be a little bit. So one stretch I really like you can do is just deep lunge position, okay? So from here, I essentially have pretty much a 90-degree angle with my knee in the front, and pretty much a 90-degree angle with my knee in the back. Then what I do to stretch the front hip a little bit is I take a little bit of a further step, maybe just a couple inches, and then I take this hip and I try to almost push it towards the ground. And when I do that, I feel this whole hip flexor region just kind of moving up a little bit. You can also kind of do some stuff to change it up a little bit. Reaching overhead and back a little bit will work. You can also turn to the side a little bit and stretch into it a little bit deeper. But always remember, you know, if you're new to this kind of thing, you might just find yourself feeling a stretch here, and that's totally okay at first. With all stretches, remember to get into position, inhale through the nose, and exhale slowly as you push into the stretch a little bit. And that'll get you stretched out pretty nicely for the hip flexor. Okay, so if we're going to stretch the hamstrings, there's any number of ways to do it. I mean, I'm sure as a little kid in gym class you remember kind of sitting down and reaching for the toes. And that works, and that's totally fine, but keep in mind, you know, we're always trying to avoid that position of lumbar flexion, the rounded lower back, whenever we can, and it's no different when you're stretching. You know, don't be afraid to get into that position on a daily basis just to move, but try not to hold it for too long. And when we're stretching, remember, you know, we're stretching everything. We're not just stretching the hamstring, but the lower back too, so try to keep it as straight up as possible. A good way to do that is to just kind of plop your foot up on an elevated surface like this one. You can use anything. I mean, I'm using a railing here outside of my gym. You can use a table, you can use whatever. You can do this pretty much as often as you want, usually for about 20 seconds to 40 seconds at a time. One crucial thing you want to do when you're stretching the hamstring, get your leg in about this, you know, sort of 90-degree position here, and then point your toe back at yourself. When you do that, you should feel the stretch kind of come on already. At that point, you can kind of reach for it a little bit, and it'll nicely, you know, sort of stretch out. Again, if you're not that flexible, this might be too high up, so you might want something a little bit lower. But the key points here are try not to bend over too far, try to bring the leg up on its own, and then from there, point your toe back at yourself, and then reach a little bit, and you should feel a really nice stretch in here. And actually in this position, because I'm not terribly flexible myself, I'm feeling a little bit of stretch in the hip flexor too. These all work together, and you know, make sure you stretch them out. That way you can kind of keep everything happy and healthy as long as possible. Alright, so one other thing I see a lot of, especially people who you know, sit while they're working, and just really in general in people who come from any sort of Western culture, we have this tendency to sort of go into what we might call a rounded or a slumped shoulder. And it looks kind of like this, right? So instead of having nice, upright, tall posture, we kind of do this with our shoulders, right? And when I do that, my middle back, the thoracic spine, is also in a less than ideal position. Everything is just kind of out of whack from here. When you come up nice and tall, everything tends to fix itself. So one thing you need to kind of focus on are exercises that encourage retraction. So here's a video that will show you some retraction and protraction. Retraction is the pinching into my shoulder blades, and protraction is the pushing out of my shoulder blades. Check it out. Good. So now that you understand the difference, you know, you keep in mind what exercises encourage retraction, since we're basically spending a lot of our day protracted anyway, right? Shoulders down. So we want to make sure we do things like, you know, rows, chin-ups where we pinch with the shoulder blades. Anything like that is generally kind of good for getting that stuff together. Another thing you can do is a cable face pull. So you'll grab like a cable stack and just kind of pull it to your face like this. Or you can do, you know, cable rows, you can do banded dislocates. There's all kinds of things. And in future installments of this kind of stuff, I'll definitely show a little more. You can also look at my website, www.trainsupreme.com, and occasionally I'll post a couple more videos of exercises you can do to treat this kind of thing. But start off simple with the basics, rows, pull-ups, and just kind of generally making sure on a daily basis, as much as possible, you keep your posture upright, because no amount of work in the gym is going to counteract what you do every single day by bad habits. So focus on that, and good luck.